Intelligence is a universal mechanical structure. It is the exact same underlying architecture, whether you are looking at a single human mind, a corporate team, or an entire civilization. To map this structure, we use a framework called QPT 3.3. QPT 3.3 is a cybernetic model that maps cognitive acts and systemic behavior by comparing them to the functions of a living, breathing city. In this model, every cognitive act is a transaction within an economy of invariants. Invariants are the fundamental currencies a system preserves to avoid collapse. Things like pure possibility, the formal structural relation break these exact circuits. Understanding this topology provides the exact mathematical and structural difference between designing an organization that intelligently adapts to its environment and building one that predictably self-destructs. This animated diagram shows the foundational coordinate system of QPT 3.3, a 12-cell matrix. The y-axis represents depth. Firstness is the immediate feel of wetness. Secondness is the physical force pushing against a dam. Thirdness represents general governing rules like fluid dynamics. Firstness is raw feeling. Secondness is physical cause and effect. Thirdness is abstract law. The x-axis maps perspective. It categorizes who is experiencing the event and how it is being observed. The outer columns represent extremes. Xi is a private internal experience, while Xc is a shared external system. Within this grid, operations are vectors moving a system through cells. You might experience a feeling, process its cause, and formalize a rule. Partial thinking lights up fragmented, isolated cells. True systemic intelligence requires building continuous, unbroken circuits across this entire topology. We step away from the static map to look at the dynamic engines running inside it, starting at the micro level. Under QPT 3.3, an individual is not a static point on a graph. An individual is a fully self-contained, self-regulating feedback circuit. This animation illustrates the foundational circuit of intelligence, the operations loop, or O. Consider a baker. They act physically by baking bread. They taste the result, experiencing its quality. They adjust their internal recipe based on that taste, then bake again. This unbroken operational loop is the strict prerequisite for any individual competence. Without local, immediate feedback from the environment, skilled action is impossible. A collective is often assumed to be a top-down superorganism commanded from above. The math shows otherwise. In this visualization, we see entrainment. Entrainment occurs when the physical output of one individual's loop becomes the direct input of another's. This creates the coordination loop, or C. It represents multiple autonomous actors mutually adjusting to one another in real time. If a butcher and a baker share a market, they adjust their schedules based on each other's physical behavior. They achieve this entirely through social interaction at the collective interior layer. This coordination emerges from friction and mutual awareness. They operate like jazz musicians, listening and adjusting to a shared tempo without a conductor. A viable collective is literally this coupling pattern. Complex, sophisticated harmonization occurs at this layer without anyone being in charge. Coordination handles local friction seamlessly, but scaling a complex system requires a new layer, management, or M. Management operates strictly between creating formal rules, like City Hall zoning laws, and monitoring their physical implementation. The critical constraint governing management is Ashby's law of requisite variety. This principle states that a control system must generate as much variety as the environment it tries to regulate. Here we see the structural difference between healthy containment and pathological command. Healthy management provides containment, setting broad boundary conditions. Arrows shoot directly into the loops, bypassing containment, instantly freezing their internal pulses and shattering the circuits. Command fails because of Ashby's law. Central rulemakers cannot process extreme local, moment-to-moment variety, like the humidity affecting a specific batch of dough. Stripped of the ability to adjust to local feedback, the operational loop stalls. True autonomy for workers is a strict cybernetic necessity for the survival of the system. Above management sits the overarching identity of the collective, the policy loop, or P. It represents the shared soul of the city, defining who the collective actually is. This diagram shows the central homeostat. A homeostat is a system's core balancing mechanism, keeping internal states stable. Here, policy acts as the exact center pivot, balancing management on one side and intelligence on the other. Management constantly pulls the system towards stability, efficiency, and repeating past successes. Intelligence, acting as the scouts analyzing the shifting environment, pulls towards adaptation, disruption, and change. If the homeostat collapses entirely to the management side, the system experiences sclerosis. Bureaucratic rigidity takes over, and the city refuses to change until it dies. If the homeostat collapses entirely to the intelligence side, the system experiences chaos. The organization perpetually reinvents itself, but nothing endures. Policy does not dictate daily action. Its strict mechanical function is to endure the massive tension of this homeostat, balancing tradition and innovation to keep the city alive. For a system to remain viable, it must verify that what it believes is objectively true. Shared belief is governed by 3 epistemic loops: knowledge, grounding, and legitimation. Abstract knowledge resides at the top of the matrix, in the realm of laws and rules. This abstract layer becomes dangerous if it ever floats free of reality. Looking at this side view of the matrix, we see the structural safeguards, the 2 tethering chains known as empirical grounding and intersubjective grounding. Empirical grounding dictates that formal theories must be physically warranted by real-world evidence. Intersubjective grounding dictates that cultural conventions must be warranted by genuine human dialogue and felt resonance. Without these 2 grounding chains, a system's internal logic might be flawless on paper, but it will be catastrophically disconnected from the real world. Real-world corporate and civilizational failures are not abstract mysteries. They are highly specific mechanical severances on this map. This illustrates the pathology of ideology. When knowledge loses empirical grounding, theories detach from reality, producing rules that never touch the ground. Furthermore, when management optimizes efficiency but decouples from policy's shared identity, exploitation results. The system extracts resources mechanically, hollowing out the community. If a worker's operational loop runs parallel but fails to couple with others, the result is alienation. The individual becomes a disconnected cog. A viable organization requires precise structural integrity. Intelligence is a 12-cell topology of 9 self-sustaining loops. Autonomy must be protected by containment, and abstract theory must be anchored by physical grounding. Mastering the QPT 3.3 framework provides the exact architectural blueprint required to build systems, organizations, and entire civilizations that endure.